turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now. Until the end.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're with you now. We're with you to the end, and we always push the end back a long way. And so do many other patriotic people, patriotic minds in many nations around the planet Earth. There's only one place you get a show like that. That's here in downtown Toronto on that channel, the one and only. You get the one and only Conspiracy Cafe, and you get the one and only freedom of thought, speech, and opinion. We deal with those hard issues. We put out the raw material that allows you to thrive and survive. I got a letter from our very determined listener and very determined supporter who bugged out of New York City. So she writes me and says, "Hi friend, your concern has brought me to tears. Thank you for your concern. We moved cross country the Thursday before the storm, packed the U-Haul truck and left. We are blessed. We carried our marine radios, combat steel-toed boots, portable solar panel battery backup generator, and left. And they moved many states southwest to get out of the way of a giant conspiracy storm. One of the few, one of the only. Some of the rest are probably still freezing in the dark, but they won't change the channel. You control what happens to you. Maybe you went through a different school system than I did, but I remember, my early grade teachers telling me to put your thinking caps on. I remember my parents and grandparents telling me to think for yourself. Don't let anybody else do it for you. Makes a difference. They probably got a nice place to stay, as opposed to some broken down buildings, rummaging around a old oil drum with some fire in it, trying to keep warm. Well, all their possessions are spread over 60 or 80 square miles. It takes courage to do what's different. It takes courage to stand up and say no to the New World Order. It takes courage to duck and cover when everybody else is laughing. But when the storm comes, when the disaster strikes, I guess we could be mean and look back and laugh, but I think we just have the satisfaction of knowing that we were given good, timely information and got the hell out of the way before it hit us. And I just marvel at the hundreds of thousands and millions who won't, who can't. It just amazes me. And I believe if anyone's going to talk about, any type of Darwinism, that has to be living proof that he's completely wrong. Because in no way, shape, or form are we evolving to a higher intellect, a higher capacity, a higher ability. We're being dumbed down, fooled down, taught to stay down like a dog. Totally giving up freedom and liberty, totally giving up the ability to discern information, taking the most foul garbage into our brains in the place of intellect. But you get what you pay for, and people seem to want to pay for that, and they will have to suffer the price. It may be coming to a neighborhood near you at one point in time. Some other young fellows who seem to have shaken off the paradigm. I like this little message. Photo of a Jewish Israeli and a Muslim Palestinian holding up a sign. This went viral on Facebook. from dosomething.org. They just say, why can't we all get along? This guy over here is a Jewish chap from Israel, and he's a Muslim Palestinian. And, you know, you don't have to hate and kill each other. You are taught to do that. Your mind is programmed to do that. You can reprogram your mind to do what they're doing. To say, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in your wars. You're not going to teach me to hate. And the corporations that are behind that and the political power bases that are behind that aren't going to succeed. Too bad. There's a classic old song from World War I, Christmas in the Trenches, where the Brits and the Germans got together at Christmas time in 1914, started singing Christmas carols, started popping out of the trenches, sharing some drinks, sharing food, stories from home, singing all kinds of, fantastic Christmas songs in German and English. And everybody got along. And then the general staff started to find out about that, and, heads were rolling. Then they had to start the war all over again. That's insane. It's not us. These royal families and all these rich people want to fight it out. Well, go ahead, fight it out. Why should good, decent people like you have to pay for it, or die for it, or get wounded for it? It's a lie. Virtually everything they tell us is a lie. The lies are sweet and succulent. And as we get into the basics of mind control, the prime programming code that we have on the website later, it may astound you at how simple it is. But your whole world has to revolve around that primary code, or you won't accept anything around you. Your ass could be on fire. You could be 50 feet underwater. Bombs could be dropping on your head. But if someone tells you that without using the pattern that you've been trained to use, it means nothing. Then you'll freeze in the dark after the storm goes by. So the big news, of course, for English people, and probably a good part of the English-speaking world, is this Levinson deal that's coming down in Britain about free speech in the newspapers, based on some of the revelations of the Murdoch empire and all the notorious deeds they've done. As I looked in the British press, and nobody seemed to just tell you what the hell happened. So that's the beauty of the beast, I guess. So luckily there was a little thing there with a CNN news clip that just said it in a sentence and a half. You didn't even have to open the article, told you what happened. The Levinson wanted to have some sort of government control over the media, so there'd be regulators and regulations enforced by, penalty to do what you're told. Which is probably to shut the hell up and not tell you anything. Destroy freedom of the press. And then, I always have to marvel at this, at why they need these new regulations and new laws. Like, it's already a criminal violation to do all the stuff they did. That really doesn't matter what they write, because at the very beginning they all should have been arrested for all these criminal violations, wiretapping people's phones, stalking people, destroying evidence of major crimes. They should be doing hard time, and they can write in the prison newspaper. But you see, because the game's fixed completely and totally, nothing happened to them. This went on for years and years and years and years and years, with more and more victims and more victims. Because the criminal laws were never enforced. Because the power structure, the invisible government, the hidden hand, controlled the courts, the judges, the lawyers, the police, to prevent all this. Some of them were probably even murdered. It's one of the cases that I have before me, that the Daily Mail brought out about another former MP, Cyril Smith, really big guy. You couldn't miss him. He's like, 7 foot tall, 500 pounds or something like that. But he was brought up on accusations of indecent assault with young boys for years. In one instance where they actually sent police reports to the Crown Prosecution Service, there was 8 complainants. So the director of public prosecutions at the time, Sir Norman Skelhorn, sent them back and said, no, there's not enough evidence that these accusations are completely without corroboration. Well, there's 8 different people. How much corroboration do you need? I see if it was a one-person thing and there's the tit-for-tat thing because the guy's all upset for one reason or another, and, you know, maybe he has a shady character. We got 8 people saying this. They said in the modern era today, these charges would be proceeded with, but in those days, no. And I think even today, no. When it comes to the elite rich, they cover each other, even to the point of maybe illegally tapping murder victims' phones and deleting evidence that could be used in a homicide trial. That should be getting you some pretty hard time. And the reason you take a risk to take that hard time, in my opinion, would be because you were probably complicitous in the murder. There's no mistake. There's no accident. If they didn't do it specifically, they were parties to the offense. And all the fluff that comes along with this is just backup material for hidden purposes. One of the big conspiracies behind it would be is that you'd want to regulate the press. So that way, the pedophiles in chief, the corrupt leaders at the top, could actually slap down any reporter who wanted to report the truth. So not only do they control the police to say you're not going to charge anybody, not only do they control the Crown prosecution to say you're not going to charge anybody, not only do they control the judges to say you're not going to arrest anybody or convict anybody or hold them to account, you're not even going to be able to publish it or talk about it. It's a pedophile delight kingdom, that England is, isn't it? As a glowing example to the world, Home Office security chief responsible for Buckingham Palace, the Prime Minister's home, and all that kind of like sort of important stuff, David Tracy, Home Office security expert, was arrested by Essex police for making indecent images of children. He works for the Office of Security and Counter-Terrorism, a Whitehall unit. He also is responsible for security at nuclear sites. Now, you know, everybody went after Petraeus and dragged him through the mud, saying, you know, okay, because, you know, he was kissing a girl instead of a camel's ass in Afghanistan, that, you know, somebody could hold him to blackmail. Well, probably everybody knew he's getting it on with this girl because she's the only girl in Afghanistan that, you know, doesn't have a big veil over her or something like that, that, you know, steps out of line. She's a homegrown, homespun cheerleader. Well, it just kind of goes without reason that, you know, they're doing something in the big tent and somebody's got a Big Johnson, which is the name of a tent company. So anyway, this dude gets caught. He does work with other agencies and departments like MI5, reports directly to Home Secretary Theresa May and the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Crime and Security. And he's nailed for diddling, or posting pictures of diddlers. It's just, you know, is there anyone in that country that doesn't like children for sex? Anyone? I don't know. Then you look at, you know, like these charges for this other dude were coming out of Greater Manchester. They killed the chief of police in Greater Manchester. I still say that's a conspiracy. They killed him for something. And if that was like the pedophile capital of England for a period of time, that may have been the reason, because the way he went down, he died before they revealed all the stuff about the phone hacking, and I'll swear to, you know, on my stack of Bibles, they were probably hacking his phone, even putting out false messages to say he was suicidal to cover up for the murder. No one's looked into that. So you gotta wonder, you know, like, what kind of police department are you? They can kill the chief and everybody just swallows it. So then, of course, this is probably the only forum in the world. We hailed that Member of Parliament, Mr. Watson in England, for taking on the task of a lot of these abused children and even coming to grips with understanding the Chipping Norton set in Britain, which includes the Prime Minister, because these people are the Prime Minister's friends. Ultimately, down the road, Andy Coulson, who is on charge now, worked in his office as his press secretary. Rebecca Brooks is a personal friend. They go riding together, play Magic Pony. They're neighbors. They drink together. Good slosh buddies. So she's part of this group that hacks into dead girls' phones like Millie Dowler and deletes messages. This chipping Norton set includes Murdoch's children. One of them's married to Matthew Freud, direct descendant of Sigmund Freud, whose uncle owned a villa in Praia da Luz, Portugal, where one of these girls went missing. So somebody in a very tight circle of friends, and this Freud uncle actually worked in the McCann household as a cook. So he had direct access to the home. Like, I don't know where they go to school to learn investigative techniques or something like that, but it seems like we only got a couple of eggs on the skillet here. And they point to the very, very, very top. And that's why they have these bullshit commissions and these frame-up charges on these people of very minor nature, really, compared to murder one. There must be a few empty places in Guantanamo where we can dunk some of these mothers and get at the real truth. So then, of course, they use one of those classic old get smart type tricks, blame it on the dead guy. So one of the new things that's coming out is they found this dead guy, Raymond Hewlett. He boasted of knowing gypsy families who wanted to buy children, so they say, and he spoke about things like that in Portugal. He died of throat cancer in 2010. He was around in May 2007 when this disappearance happened. So right away they're making the quantum leap that he stole Maddie and sold her to gypsies in Morocco. I don't remember, too many gypsies in Morocco, but I guess when you're making it up, you can go all the way. So this guy refused to talk to various people when they wanted to talk to him back in the day, including private detectives and such like that, which is, reporters and such like that. So, you're really under no obligation to talk to any of these people. Why should you be? But he had a charge against him in the 70s. Not that serious a charge. It's 1978. He had an attack where he put a gun to a victim's back, an indecent assault in 1975. And then he's kind of cleared up. Nothing happens for, 30 years. Seems kind of weird all of a sudden that now he's selling people. Well, maybe he was one of their people right from the very beginning. And because he's dead, you got no use for him anymore. So maybe he was part of the collection agency to pick up some of these kids, and you just don't need him anymore because you can't collect any more kids because he's dead. So you say, well, okay, well, what can we use him for? Well, let's pin this crime on him, and then all the Chipping Norton set can walk away. These people should be grilled like in a B movie. You slap them a couple of times in the face. Because the bottom line is, they could be, well, they are suspects. I suspect them. But they could be actual perpetrators of a much more serious crime. And you're never going to find this out until, you get all the B-movie stuff out. And knock them around a little bit. Put them under surveillance. Start tapping their phones. Hey? It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, eh? What are they talking about all the time? That's what we need. We need like a regulatory police squad that investigates the police and the politicians and reports to nobody except God. So the BBC, as a reporter, sends out a fake story. Correspondent John Donison puts out a tweet about a wounded girl in the Gaza in this war. It turns out that this was an old story and an old picture that he sent out that came from Syria. And he gets paid to do that. You may pay to buy some of this stuff. is just absolutely amazing. There is no decent source of truth or journalism. Nobody will grab these suckers by the throat and hold them down because they're gutless cowards. And that's how you step into wars, destruction, because you're all afraid. Should be the motto of most countries, most organizations. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. You afraid? I'm afraid. You're afraid. I'm afraid. Everybody's afraid. I got to get my pension, so I'm afraid. So even you're big and tough, big girly man, bench press a car, carry your big gun, got your big badge. I'm afraid because I don't want to lose my pension. So it's okay if you kill little girls. You got to be kidding me. It's like I've said many times before, my grandma carried a purse with a brick in it. She'd lay you out, you touch some kid, just whack! Boom! Oh! Be like getting hit with a baseball bat. Because you wouldn't expect there was a brick in the purse. So you might not cover too hard. Unfortunately, she didn't get to be chief of police. It's too bad. We get to the bottom of some of this stuff really, really quick. Nothing like a knitting needle through the kidney, you know? Coming out the back of your spine. Oh! I'll talk. I'll talk. So it's so bad, 2 news anchors in Bangor, Maine, on the ABC network, WVII, or it's almost like German for World War II, quit live on air. I was going to show the video, maybe I won't because it'll take up some time, and basically they just quit live on air, and they didn't really tell you why because they probably would have cut the electricity and everything would have gone dark. Cindy Michaels, Tony Consiglio, they've been on the news desk 6 years. They went to a local newspaper and started to tell them what's really going on is, basically there's a guy behind over here, right? And they got like one of those big hooks like when you're on Broadway, right? So if you step out of line or say something like the truth, they pull you back. And then a little monkey comes out until they can find somebody else to take your place. Or the lights just go out. Ooh, we have a technical difficulty. And when the technical difficulty is sorted out, there's somebody new sitting at the desk going like, hey, wait a minute. Where'd the other 2 go? I've been watching them for 6 years. But that's how hard and well they control the news. Everything you get to see is the best lie that they can manufacture. And that's all you can have, because what they're doing is they're programming your mind, you see. You think you're free. There's an old saying that goes along like that, There's no greater slave than the one who thinks he's free. So you think you're free. So basically what they've done is they've given you a data set that they've pre-selected. So you got data set this, and data set that, and data set that. They're all lies or half-truths. So you look at those 3 things and you go, oh yeah, well I can't do that one, and this one's got an error here, so obviously I got to pick this one. Well, they already know that. They could do that with a gorilla in the cage. What's he going to do? He picks the box with the banana, right? Ha ha! As if that takes something to work out. So you think you're free because you picked the box with the banana like the gorilla in the zoo. Because you had 3 little data sets to pick from, A, B, and C. And you go, ooh, I know the right one. It's the one with the banana. And you thought you made a free decision. But really the data set's like this. You got hundreds of pages here that they don't tell you about. That's kept off the screen. So you have no idea. So instead of 3 choices, you might have had 3,000 data sets to analyze to make your decision. And then you would have made a much more accurate and better decision. So maybe if you lived in the Northeast, instead of just my one fan and supporter bugging out, there might have been tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And maybe we could have put enough political pressure on the government to own up to these weather weapons, to say, hey pal, what's going on? We're losing some really big cities here in the United States. We've had enough of this shit. Who's using weather weapons and how? And if these weather weapons exist and you can steer storms, how come you're not steering them out to sea? It's like you got a car without a steering wheel, right? You're going along, and all of a sudden it's like, holy smokes, there's a bus in front of me. Well, we invented the steering wheel a long time ago, right? You steer out of the way. Or you put the brakes on. But they put us in a car and they pretend there's no steering wheel and there's no brakes. Ooh, I don't know how that could have happened. Go back to your cage and get a banana. It's in box C. So some of the other news that just kind of slips under the radar screen, that's why it's very important to read news in other countries. To get outside of this block that's made for you. They create little cages that that you can't get out of, so that you have to go down a certain trail. And anytime I see that, a lot of times I just don't want to go down that trail for spite. I just want to spit in your eye. Yeah, mother? I don't want you telling me what trail I can go down. I'm going to go down a trail I feel like. Even if your trail's got the milk and the honey at the end of the line. I want to be able to pick my trail. When I come into the studio tonight, I try to flick on a page to get onto one of my email accounts to look at. And right away, like, the big corporation here that controls everything, Rogers, takes me to their page. I didn't want your effing page. I put in Hotmail. I didn't put in your shit. And automatically, no matter how many times you do it, just takes you to something. Well, I don't have an account with those assholes. So it's like, well, I can't even go down the trail even if I wanted to, because, so they're what they're doing is just making it impossible for me to have free choice. I open up a Google page. Of course, here you get Google Canada. So I put in google.com. Automatically, it switches back to google.ca. I said, well, I didn't enter that. I entered google.com. I can put in Google Italy, Google the UK, probably Google Kazakhstan, Google Afghanistan, Google under my camel's balls, but I can't do google.com in the United States to see if there was a Google doodle or something there. So one of the fans sent us a little trick that you can override all that kind of stuff, but that's not there on the page. It used to be in the old days. We just say, you can have google.ca or google.com, and you just pick whatever one you want. You can go back and forth anyway. Free speech, free travel, free ideas. Now there's like a barrier, because 99.9% of the people aren't going to say, I want google.com, and I don't give an effing rat ass to look at google.ca even if they pay me money, because it's not what I put in. I want what I put in. Because I know that they put the Great Wall of China between the two, so that I can't find out what's going on in America, and probably by the reverse, a lot of people in America can't get other news or ideas or search topics from outside of the box that you have to be kept in. So I went to Pravda, and I find out that's a newspaper in Russia, if you don't know. Sometimes it's nice to see what the Ruskies have to say. They have an English language edition. They do like the Daily Mail too. They got big busty girls and all kinds of bullshit stories, but sometimes they tell you some interesting news. Comes from other sources in Europe or other places. It's translated from their language into English, into Russian, all kinds of stuff. You can look at it in all kinds of languages. Russia to return to Afghanistan after the U.S. occupation. Now there's got to be a kick in the head. So seemingly since 27 March 1919, Russia was one of the first countries, if not the first country, to recognize the independence of a sovereign Afghanistan. And I bet it's been a sore in a lot of people's eyes. So as the Western troops go out, Karzai's inviting in the Ruskies. Of course, they fought a big, brutal war there, but hey, everything's forgiven now, because now we hate Americans for a while, and we're tired of killing them. So come on back. So they said, it's propaganda because it's Russian news here, right? Soviet soldiers are remembered with respect in Afghanistan. They did not trample on the dignity of the Afghans. What you smoking, boy? 44,000 dead Ruskies. God knows how many dead Afghanis. You know what the sport was back then? Because those days, you get out of the Olympics. America didn't go to the Russian Olympics. Russians didn't go to the American Olympics back in those days, if you're too young to remember. The big thing for Afghanis, they had a sport too. You know what their sport was? Skinning Russians alive and baking them in the hot sand. Better than hillbillies. Deliverance, baby. That's what you did to them, because the Ruskies raped the women. Ruskies killed all kinds of innocent people. It was a great movie about the Afghan war with the Russians. I think it's about a tank. I forget the title of it, but I'm sure if you look Afghan war, Russian tank movie, you'll find it. I've seen it a couple of times years ago. It's just absolutely stunning. So the Russians come in, lay waste to whole villages of undesirables. Die, you mothers! And then some Afghan men just hunt them down and slowly attack the tank. Disable a piece here, a little piece there, a little piece there. Weaken them. Work on them so they can't escape. Because they can't get out of the desert. They can't get out of the hot sun. It's just a matter of time before we break them down enough and get them, one by one. Skin them alive. Bake them in the hot sun. But that's only the truth. Works like that maybe with these global bastards, you know, in time, when we get tired of all this war, and we get tired of them killing our children, starving us, beating us, screwing us around. Maybe some old Afghani women will teach us how to skin them alive and cook them on the hot sand. Well, my grandma give you a nice brick to put in your purse. Whack! Take that, Henry Kissinger. Russian and American and Japanese astronaut returned to Earth, so if they were involved in this little conspiracy with the Hurricane Sandy, they've landed. Of course, that was front page news around the world, but of course, you know, the only place I even saw a hint of this was on Pravda. The 33rd ISS mission took place at 5:53 Moscow time. They talk about them conducting a scientific mission, like maybe making weather storms. Who knows? The 34th mission of the ISS will blast off on December the 19th. Keep that in mind. Put that on your calendar just in case, you know, you're getting ready for that Mayan day, right? And then we have some more. We have a cosmonaut, Romanenko, a NASA astronaut, Thomas Mashburn, and a Canadian astronaut, Chris Hadfield, going up to do whatever they're going to do up there. Russia sending warships to the Gaza area. That might have been a whole lot to help them sign that peace deal. The Navy is going to reduce its carriers in the Persian Gulf. That's kind of interesting. Almost falls in with some of our little codes there. Let's see. I think I put that up for the little show blurb today so we can find it. I like this picture. That's a cool picture. Don't worry, my colleague will juice that in there. I've already seen my puss a lot. That's a cute little one. So the USS Nimitz is going to return home from the Middle East for repairs to leave only the USS Stennis. That's the one where they relieved the Admiral Gowet to maintain the big stick. When it heads home in March, it will be relieved by the USS Harry S. Truman. And then we were playing around with this Google Doodle code back then. The USS Truman was laid down as the USS United States. Her call sign is Lone Warrior. So we wonder if she'll be the Lone Warrior when she's out there. And of course, the little doodle will come to pass. Because as it comes down, you know, we're going to be facing an economic crisis in probably a very short order. The major reasons for war are the God principle, gold, oil, drugs. And gold is going to be necessary. And they'll fight over it. So in our doodle, we found out that Captain Ahab traveled back from the Pacific on the USS United States. That was kind of one of the hidden little messages in there. And of course, the Harry S. Truman was originally laid down as the USS United States. So we may be seeing a little action there with the Lone Warrior. Very interesting. You see, we can't escape what's coming. The only chance we have is to try to understand it. And one of the best places, of course, to try to understand it is to come to conspiracy-cafe.com, the website we use for this show. Come to that channel. Come to Conspiracy Cafe. You come with a few bucks in your hand. That doesn't go too bad either. Even our good friend there from New York put some of those Federal Reserve notes in our pocket to help this show. because there's something different about this, is we can save your lives. We can give you information. It may be hard for a lot of people to swallow or even begin to understand. They can make a difference. Iran is working on a nuclear bomb, they say. Leaked graph shows computer testing for weapons 3 times as powerful as the Hiroshima blast. Didn't even waste my time to bring this up as, because who knows who drew this graph? It's just something the CIA or former CIA director's mistress, drew on a pillow or something in a cheesy hotel room. Like, who knows who drew this graph? They just say, well, they're making this bomb and they got this graph that they found. Well, anybody could have made that. You don't know. You got to trust them. Take it as gospel. And who are you trusting? Trusting maybe people from the pedophile kingdom, England. Maybe you're trusting, all the liars, perverts, and cheats in the news media. There's a great book out. I'm sure I mentioned it before, but it's just something you got to have in your little inventory of truth. It's called Lights, Camera, War, written by I believe it was a Newsweek foreign news specialist, about how they make up the news. I mean, make it up. Not report it, create it. So it's just like, I'm here. There ain't much here. This is just a studio, right? So there's not a whole lot to hide. We pan the room. You can see the stage on one side and the furniture and the technical stuff and all. It's very simple or whatever. You go to like these, masterminds here with the big networks. She shows you. So they're filming, and behind you see the desert and the tanks and the battles and the sweat and the blood and the guts. Well, there's no blood and guts, but they almost imply that it could be there any minute. So it's, you got tanks and soldiers and guns. Like, it could happen any second, right? And then you see the camera angle change to the other side. Then you see the hotel. You're at a 5-star hotel on the edge of the desert, standing in the parking lot. And the way they're filming you is they're filming at the edge of the property of the hotel, so it looks like they're in the desert. But they're not. So, okay, cut. Okay, boys, let's go back to the barn, have some, Grand Marniers. We roughed it pretty good in the blazing hot sun. And you see that shit, and you think you actually saw them somewhere where they're filming the news. Lights, camera, war. It's brilliant. But the big thing is, after a lot of people have been told that, it's like I just told you, I got a glass of water here, see? It's got water in it. And I tell you, somebody pissed in that, eh? Oh, great. I thought I told you somebody pissed in that. Yeah, but it's from CNN. That was CNN piss. And they go back every time. Something in the Bible about that. A fool returns to his folly, like a dog returns to his vomit. Dogs like to eat that stuff. They lick their ass. What do you expect? So I just told you that was poison. Why would you go back? There's 3 little boxes here. I'm in the gorilla cage. Okay, lights, camera, war. I get the banana. Sorry, gorilla. So here's another story. They talk about, Petraeus and his emails, General Allen and his emails, and these big busty girls and their emails. See, I don't get any big busty girls here. It's just, sorry, just me and Aaron here. We're a low budget operation. So, no big sex scandals to get the ratings to go up or anything like that. We're trying, we got a sign out in the hallway or something like that. Maybe the cleaning lady will come in late one night and, walk by or something like that, and you say, oh, wow, something female. So the emails that really matter were the emails that were written by the admiral in the Bin Laden raid. Oh, Bin Laden. Yeah, they did the fake Bin Laden raid. We covered that. You go back in our archives. You see, I don't have to eat a whole lot of stuff with ketchup here to get it down. We covered this stuff all over the world about how they faked the Bin Laden raid. That it was really a girls' school. Nobody figured that out. They had a big sign of this building, right? Big sign. And it has writing on it. And this is going out to the whole world. Hundreds of millions of people, if not billions. Maybe little billions, maybe big billions, I don't know. There's only like 7 billion of us. A lot of us can't read anyway, but you know, even we cut it in half and say there's 1.5 billion. We're doing pretty good. Saw this sign with a phone number on the bin Laden compound. As soon as you hear the word compound, you know you're getting sucked into something. Because they always use that word to try to make somebody look bad. You're using a compound. The White House is probably a bigger compound than that was, surrounded by fence armed guards. You know, it's got surface-to-air missiles and, you know, helicopter gunships probably at a, you know, snap your fingers, here they come. You know, C-130 comes in, just levels the street. That's a compound. But we don't say that because we're trying to say he's a good guy. So that's the White House. But because this guy's in this other building and we're trying to make him evil, he lives in a compound. Like, you know, those people at Waco, they lived in a compound. It was a girls' school. And they got high walls, right? Because they probably know, in those days, because that was Abbotsford or whatever it was called, Abbottabad or Abbotsford, you know, whatever it was, named after an old British something or another. They know them people, right? They do something they don't do in England. They lock up their kids. They know those suckers like to take their kids. So they got high walls. They keep them inside. They lock the gate. Hey, pedo, hit the road. No coming in here. Smart. They learned that over hundreds of years. So that's what it was. It was a girls' school. And in very popular languages. In India and Pakistan, people, you know, speak those languages. And so there had to be tens of millions of people that could read that. But those people that have this guidebook called Lights, Camera, War, they're never going to let them talk, definitely not on the English-speaking media, about what that sign really said. So as soon as I saw the writing, you know, I started asking people, hey, somebody find me somebody speaks that language. What's the sign say? It's a girls' school. It's not a bin Laden compound. It was private school, went out of business or something like that for a little while. Now it's flat. It's another good sign, you know, that it's hit the fan and they're taking over. It's, everything's flat. World Trade Center, flat. Take it all away, send it to China, melt it down, destroy all the evidence. So the evidence from these emails come from the same admiral. So that kind of shocked me. Rear Admiral Charles Goet, May 2nd email, talking about the fake funeral of bin Laden. He didn't say it was a fake funeral, but nobody saw the body. There's no evidence. No death certificate, it says here. No autopsy report. No DNA identification. You know, I'll tell you something. Even back in the old days, you know, you took pictures of bodies, even with a box camera. Because part of doing any type of forensic work is identification. It's fundamental. It's the whole raison d'etre of police identifying bodies. You use whatever you can. Photographs, measurements, nowadays DNA samples, fingerprints, dental records. You got to prove that body A belongs to name A. And B with B and C with C. Even you got lots of bodies you got to do it with. It's just fundamental. It's like, you know, Air Force Ones going out without wings. Yeah. The president's limousine's got no wheels. It's up on blocks. Yeah, I believe that. Sure. You gotta have this stuff. It's just so fundamental, it's beyond belief. So in his email he says, traditional procedures for Islamic burial were followed. The deceased body was washed and then placed in white sheet. The body was placed in a weighted bag. A military officer read prepared religious remarks, which were translated into Arabic by a native speaker. After the words were complete, the body was placed on a prepared flat board, tipped up, whereupon the deceased body slid into the ocean. So most of the emails are heavily blacked out, redacted as they say. There's no witnesses, no sailors, no nothing, no pictures. Nobody saw this happen. You know, they got pictures of some, you got pictures of the president's head being blown off. He's our guy. That's okay. CIA's probably got pictures of Petraeus with his Johnson up in the tent. That's okay. Maybe they don't put them on the internet or anything like that, but I'm sure they have it. So then he makes some strange remarks, a cryptic reference to the intense secrecy surrounding the mission. The paucity of documentary evidence in our possession is a reflection of the emphasis placed on operational security during the execution of this phase of the operation. That sounds like he could be a politician. So he sends this to Admiral Mike Mullen, then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General James Mattis, top officer at the U.S. Central Command. Mullen retired in September 2011. Goet was then Deputy Commander of the Navy's Fifth Fleet. He used code words to discuss whether helicopters were carrying the SEALs and bin Laden's body had arrived on the Vincent. So he says, "Any news of the package for us?" he asked Rear Admiral Samuel Perez, commander of the Carrier Strike Group that included Vincent. "FedEx delivered the package," Perez responded. "Both trucks are safely en route home base." I think they made it all up. I still do. Then we have some good news. There's a war on for your mind. There's a war on for the planet Earth. There's a war on for everything. Your soul, your heart, your mind. It's called the New World Order. They're trying to take over. They're muscling in every direction. And they're coming to grips with the fact that they're losing. So during a recent speech in Poland, U.S. National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, the man who wrote a lot of the books about, how to round us up, make us into slaves and kick our asses, warned fellow elitists that a worldwide resistance movement to external control driven by a populist activism is threatening to derail the move to a new world order. Yee-haw! The notion that the 21st century is the American century is a shared delusion. American domination was no longer possible, driven by instant mass communication such as radio, television, and the internet, and assholes like me, if I could say that, which have been cumulatively stimulating a universal awakening of mass political consciousness. Persistent and highly motivated populist resistance of politically awakened and historically resentful peoples. I'm not resentful yet. Not yet. You gotta wait a little while before I'm resentful. When I'm resentful, you'll know about it. Put the brick back in my grandma's purse. Maybe it's down in the basement somewhere. Then you'll know I'm resentful. Is it big new? I'm resentful, baby. Really, really. Wow! Hey, look at all the teeth on the floor. That was a good brick. To external control has proven to be increasingly difficult to suppress. Oh well. So let's see here. Where we got the big news? I think I can find him in here somewhere. There we go. There's a big news. Let's see if we can play this little puppy here, and you can hear a little bit of the big news. Can you talk the big news? And can I listen to that too? Good.
Over Soviet Russia gave birth to the brief but widely shared illusion that the 21st century would hence be the American century, with the United States acting as the world's benevolent hegemon. 20 years later, a truly comprehensive American global domination is no longer possible. That is so for several reasons. In recent decades, worldwide social change has experienced unprecedented historical acceleration, particularly because instant mass communications, such as radio, television, and the internet, cumulatively have been stimulating a universal awakening of mass political consciousness. The resulting widespread rise in worldwide populist activism is proving inimical to external domination of the kind that prevailed in the age of colonialism and imperialism. Persistent and highly motivated populist resistance of politically awakened and historically resentful peoples to external control has proven to be increasingly difficult to suppress, as protracted guerrilla warfares in Vietnam, Algeria, or Afghanistan have amply demonstrated, and as the rising turmoil in both the Middle East and Southwest Asia are foreshadowing. At the same time, the acquisition by the major powers of weaponry of increasingly destructive capabilities has made the notion of victory in a nuclear war among them prohibitively costly. That has prompted a degree of self-restraint that was absent in the pre-atomic age in relations among major powers. Last but not least, the ongoing shift in the center of gravity of global political power from the West to the East, dramatized by the rise of China and of Asia more generally, signals conclusively the onset of a historically new and more complex distribution of global power. In that much more complex historical and geopolitical setting, democratic America admittedly is still the world's most powerful, the richest, and the most influential state. Therefore, much still depends on how America conducts itself in world affairs. But to a much greater degree than in recent past, a great deal now depends also on the conduct of other major powers. We would all probably agree that any list of the contemporary world's geopolitically most important states would include America, China, Russia, not the European Union as such, because of its lack of political cohesion, but more specifically Germany, France, and Great Britain, and in the East, Japan, as well as India. And of course, China, which I've already mentioned. Unfortunately, each of these currently most significant states is, in one fashion or another, experiencing serious systemic handicaps that reduce and constrict their respective capacity for shaping world affairs. To be more specific, today's American political system is increasingly gridlocked and unable to address effectively the country's serious domestic, economic, financial problems, especially those that are generating growing social inequality. At the same time, America's global legitimacy has been damaged in recent years by its unilateral reliance on military power, especially in the Middle East, while its infrastructural renewal has been burdened by the high financial costs of prolonged local wars. In the near future, America's global influence could be further jeopardized by the likely consequences of any war with Iran. China, despite its historically unprecedented and truly remarkable modernization, is showing signs of internal political stress between its ruling bureaucracy and the increasingly nationalistic armed forces, and of a growing restlessness among the younger portions of China's newly prosperous middle class regarding the political system's controls over their mounting aspirations.
Okay, that's the big news. Goodbye, the big news. There's an old Georgism that I have. Came up with this a long time ago because the New World Order always has their little words to try to scare you, put you down or something like that. So one of them was, resistance is futile. And then the dodo heads who eat the banana from the gorilla's cage accept that and go, yeah, resistance is futile, man. Just smoke my dope until I die and, the hell with everything else. Well, I rewrote that. I go, resistance is not futile. It is fundamental. And you underline the fun in fundamental, because when you go mental, take my grandma's purse with the brick in it and whack a globalist across the head. I guess maybe we can work out a prize for that, get old purses from the Salvation Army or some liquidation place or something and fill them with bricks and give them out as prizes to people. Because, there's no end to people to whack with these things. Tony Blair says Eurosceptics are like a virus. I guess that couldn't be taken to anybody who doesn't believe in this global bullshit. Yeah, that's a virus, buddy. See me? I'm a virus. You know what this virus is going to do to you? One day, we're going to put you in a cell, slam the door shut, and you're never coming out again. And if you do come out again, it's because we're going to hang you for treason. Starting all them stupid wars and all that kind of stuff. Killing all kinds of innocent people. Starting to build this global empire for the corporations and the elite rich, trying to be the next Napoleon, the next Hitler, the next Mussolini. And we know what happened to Mussolini. This global empire cannot work. It would collapse and fall apart. So he talks about things that, there's the UK Independence Party and various aspects of the Conservative Party that are pushing to, they want a referendum to get out of this European Union crap. Because globalization can't work. It defies the simple laws in economics, the economy of scale. Bigger is not better. Bigger gets too big until it becomes unwieldy and it falls apart and collapses. So you can't make something that big to infinity or to this global empire. It can't work. And only a madman is going to try to do it. So by getting Britain involved in this thing, forces Britain to collapse with the European Union. This European Union is kind of like a shitbox car analogy. Okay, you got an old beat up car and all four wheels point in different directions. Two of the tires are flat. Transmission's burned out. Enough smoke comes out of it to make it, like a greenhouse gas monster. Because the rings are blown. It's burning oil like there's no tomorrow. Radiator fluid's all over the ground. The brakes don't work. And then Tony Blair comes along and says, you're an idiot. You got to buy into this car. This car is Europe. You're an idiot if you buy into it. Just as a little bit of The difference is a little short clip I got here of Nigel Farage, the head of the United Kingdom Independence Party, just to give you a little bit of difference between a globalist and a non-globalist. Okay, let's wind this up.
And that for the EFD group, Mr. Farage.
Another one bites the dust. Country number 4, Spain, gets bailed out, and we all, of course, know that it won't be the last. Though I wondered over the weekend whether perhaps I was missing something, because when the Spanish Prime Minister, Mr. Rajoy, got up, he said that this bailout shows what a success the Eurozone has been. And I thought, well, having listened to him over the previous couple of weeks telling us there wouldn't be a bailout, I've got the feeling after all his twists and turns, he's just about the most incompetent leader in the whole of Europe. And that's saying something, because there's pretty stiff competition. Indeed, every single prediction of yours, Mr. Barroso, has been wrong. And dear old Herman Van Rompuy, well, he's done a runner, hasn't he? Because the last time he was here, he told us we'd turned the corner, that the euro crisis was over, and he hasn't bothered to come back and see us. You know, I remember being here 10 years ago and hearing the launch of the Lisbon Agenda. We were told that with the euro by 2010 we would have full employment, and indeed that Europe would be the competitive and dynamic powerhouse of the world. By any objective criteria, the euro has failed, and in fact there is a looming impending disaster. You know, this deal makes things worse, not better. 100 billion is put up for the Spanish banking system, and 20% of that money has to come from Italy. And under the deal, the Italians have to lend to the Spanish banks at 3%, but to get that money, they have to borrow on the markets at 7%. It's genius, isn't it? It really is brilliant. So what we're doing with this package is we're actually driving countries like Italy towards needing to be bailed out themselves. In addition to that, we put a further 10% on Spanish national debt. And I tell you, any banking analyst will tell you 100 billion doesn't solve the Spanish problem. It would need to be more like 400 billion. And with Greece teetering on the edge of euro withdrawal, the real elephant in the room is that once Greece leaves, the ECB, the European Central Bank, is bust. It's gone. It has 444 billion euros worth of exposure to the bailed out countries. And to rectify that, you'll need to have a cash call from Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Greece and Italy. You couldn't make it up, could you? It is total and utter failure. This ship, the Euro Titanic, has now hit the iceberg, and sadly there simply aren't enough lifeboats.
You know.
Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Now, you see a big difference between him and Zbigniew. You can tell the liar from the truth teller. Who do you want to lead your country? The UK Independence Party is probably about the only way you can go. And they know it. So what are the globalists doing to them? UK Independence Party had some members, people striving to run for public office, to support a political party, to support political ideas about whether or not this was supposed to be the Prime Minister's referendum question. So if you have a question, there's got to be two answers, right? Yay or nay. It's going to be on the ballot. So the people who belong to the UK Independence Party, of course, would vote nay. They don't want to be part of the European Union. So what one of the local governments in England did was take away the children, foster children, but still children, 3 children, from a couple who supported and worked for the UK Independence Party because they say they oppose multiculturalism. They don't oppose multiculturalism. What they say is they just want, somebody's coming into England. They don't want killers, murderers, terrorists, etc., etc., etc. And we want them properly screened and introduced into our country. So that's what they did. They took away children and punished them. This is the Rotherham Borough Council. Orwell is alive and well in Britain. Hopefully there's some secret meetings going on with Conservative members of Parliament to try to get them to join the UK Independence Party, because they're anti-Europe and they're not going to go anywhere in the Conservative Party. Cameron's going to back off on this referendum because he's a globalist. He has to. He's only lying when he says he's going to have a referendum or something. Hopefully that goes further. Nigel Farage, and they tried to kill him. Plane crash. That's how much truth he speaks. God saved him. And that makes it doubly, triply, quadruply important to listen to him. I just had a car crash. He had a plane crash. He survived. He's still there. He's still making noise. He's somebody you can hold in high esteem. And then our bastard Blair, warmonger, is working for Kazakhstan, whore for the highest bidder, gets £8 million a year as an advisor to the Kazakhstan dictator. I think you could pay me any kind of money to work for a dictator, unless I was the jail guard who helped him in and out of the cell. So one of the country's papers was very critical about Blair and what he had to say. So the dictator ordered it closed. The Nursultan Nazarbayev is the president. And he closed down this newspaper and a lot of other opposition press. They had crackdowns where police killed 15 protesters. And this newspaper said that Blair had blood on his hands by supporting this dictator. Of course, that's not going to get on a lot of mainstream news. Also involved with a lot of the stuff for Peter Mendelsohn, Alistair Campbell. And then this newspaper, Respublica, along with 7 sister titles and 23 news websites, and another newspaper, opposition newspaper, satellite TV station, sent to the wind because they told the truth. So they're doing globalism too, trying to bring back the USSR. I said that before. This was in Pravda last week. The inevitable customs union is on the agenda. A new currency for CIS states, Baltic countries, and Georgia. Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan will probably do the same thing, because they have to. It's all part of the globalization agenda. So I say I don't have to eat my words too often. Still looking for some ketchup to eat them with. But I said they're bringing back the USSR 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I can't even remember anymore. We've done so many shows here. Even the great Kurdistan, putting the Kurds of Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Iraq together in some kind of greater homeland, is on the agenda, according to Pravda. And it's up to you, the people, unless you like getting a banana in a cage with a gorilla, to do something. So the United States, they say they have 1,200 militia groups now. It's difficult to say what their objectives are because there's so many of them. But this news report I kind of liked, so we'll play this puppy and see how it goes. They get into people who understand that the United States is a corporation, that the United States as a corporation is going to fail, and people have to take over. Let's see what happens here.
It's a binary risk. including killing police officers. Only the ABC 7 News I-team was able to get into one of those meetings.
Dan Noyes is here now with a look at what the Republic for the United States is all about.
Dan and Carolyn, the so-called sovereign citizens movement has grown in recent years, but even the FBI doesn't know how many people are involved. Some experts say there may be hundreds of thousands of people. Tonight, the I-team gets exclusive access to a meeting of people from across California who have formed a shadow government for when the real one collapses.
I pledge allegiance.
It sounds like it.
One nation, under God.
It looks like it.
And justice for all.
But this isn't the old glory you and I know.
We're here to save our nation, aren't we?
This is the October meeting of the California Assembly of the Republic for the United States of America. People from all over the state, including the Bay Area, gather in the Central Valley town of Visalia once a month to plan for the future. The group believes an act of Congress in 1871 made the U.S. government a private, for-profit corporation. Members say after that, Congress changed its oath of office, and that means the Republic can take over.
Basically, as a member of Congress, they changed to taking an oath of office to the corporation. At that immediate moment was when they vacated Congress.
The Republic has elected its own representatives, senators, and even a president. They are waiting for the U.S. government to collapse, and when it does, they say they will take charge.
We are really working for the constitutional government, limited government.
The group follows common law, believes driver's licenses aren't needed, and paying taxes is optional.
It's a matter of us being the sovereign that we are to rule ourselves.
Of course, this is all a gigantic joke.
Mark Potok with the Southern Poverty Law Center tracks sovereign citizens' activities. The Republic leadership states it is not part of the sovereign movement, any militias, and does not promote violence. But Potok says the beliefs fit the sovereign movement's ideology.
They all have the same set of ideas. The government's not legitimate. It is engaged in a massive ripoff of its citizens.
Believing in the sovereign citizen ideology, as unusual as it seems, is not a crime.
Special Agent Lawrence Buckley oversees the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force in Northern California. He says the FBI doesn't get involved with sovereigns unless there is evidence of illegal activity.
It's certainly a priority. The biggest concern that I have is individuals who may become violent.
Buckley says most sovereign crimes are schemes involving mortgage fraud or promises to relieve debt. In fact, the Republic's president, Tim Turner, is in federal custody on fraud and tax charges.
Since 2007, this man has been traveling around telling people they can get out of certain debts, that they can get free money from the government, and a whole series of other falsehoods.
There are also cases where sovereigns not linked to the Republic have been violent and confrontational. In 2010, Jerry and Joe Kane killed 2 officers in West Memphis, Arkansas. They died later in a shootout with police.
I'm not subject to your jurisdiction.
When a sovereign citizen refused to leave his camera outside an Idaho courtroom, a bailiff tased him.
Step back. And you're using...
In Arizona, Michael Crane is accused of murdering 3 people. He claims the court has no authority over him.
I am a sovereign man. I am a man of flesh and blood.
We come in peace to offer forgiveness to the de facto who have defrauded this country so badly.
Back at the California Assembly meeting in Visalia, the people in this room are about to make it official.
What we're doing here today as a group, and I hope as a family, is to say, yes, I want to be a sovereign living in honor.
They raise their right hands and swear an oath of citizenship.
I absolutely and renounce any law form that is antithetical to the law form of the Republic of the United States of America.
They are now part of a different government with different leaders and different laws. The final step, a symbolic blood oath, placing a red thumbprint on their new citizenship documents.
Congratulations to all of you who have declared your citizenship with the Republic for the United States of America.
I want to be clear, the members we spoke with say they are not violent, but that they will take over when the U.S. government fails. The group also claims to have the support of the U.S. military, but both the Southern Poverty Law Center and the FBI say that's not true.
Okay. What a nice little story that is. So one of the big things that these idiots always work on is to say, well, you know, they talk about violence. That's the major issue, because the natural law of the universe, whether you like it or not, is might makes right. And the reason they don't want you having any might is because you might make right. So that's why violence is always an issue. Government is force. Government has always been force. That's why they have the military going around with arms, putting them in your face. We saw that here in Toronto, just outside our windows here, with the G20. You know, tens of thousands of armed people intimidating and pushing around the totally benign, mostly asleep populace in and around Toronto, using violence. You use violence all the time, government. These people are just realizing they've been had and coming up with an alternative solution, which is their God-given right and their constitutional right to do. And when we get to a point in time where enough people understand, and we get to the 50+1, or the 60-40 split, or the 70-30 split, the tyranny that we've known from the present governments that use violence, as that guy who got tasered found out very quickly, is over. Because the vast majority of thinking and sentient minds will have decided that we no longer want the corporation. We need to have these records on the table, up front and center, but they hide everything through veils and veils of secrecy, classified documents. And most of the people who are agents of law enforcement or the military are agents of the corporation. So of course they're not going to trash their employers, because they lost something along the way. They're just whores working for the corporation, or mercenaries, whatever you want to call them. You see, the ultimate employer is the lender of last resort that they shake down for money when they want it to give to the big banks, the big corporations, or the hangers-on of whatever politico is in power. Starts with the Constitution. We, the people. That's who your employer is. They're just quite happy to shoot them down in the street. And not allow any discussion about this. We have to be at least glad there was some discussion about this on this news channel. It was relatively balanced, although you have to go to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is an activist group of globalists, to take away all your rights and freedoms, to make you hate your freedom and love bondage. So as soon as you see the usual suspects lined up, you know right away, Grandma, where's the purse? Far-right politician condemned in Hungary demanding a list of Jews who pose a national security risk. Martin Gajanowski, or whatever his name is, from the right wing, or far-right wing. They don't even have wings, it's just far-right. There is no wings. Jobbik Party came up with this one. That's the danger of the European Union. The European Union was Hitler's idea, ultimately. And the European Union, if it ever comes back, will be a giant fascist paradise. So not something you want to get involved in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully my little page opens up here in the same day. Maybe I'll even try to do it on another one. So we get here's some interesting little decrypts in the world of the Twilight language. One of them is one we've used before. We use it again as an example. The Knowing Code from the movie Knowing told us a lot about the future. So before it happened, it's all speculation. After it happened, we can go back and look with great detail what they've done. So part of the movie Knowing is, you know, there's this large page of numbers that seem to be random, put in a time capsule. The time capsule is retrieved, and Nicolas Cage, as the star of the film, uncovers these things and realizes they're code. And they are. This is a close-up of that page, and you know, of course it attracts your attention with the 666. But also, we zoom in a little closer with the 9814 here and show you something very bizarre. It is a quantum universe. There are dimensions outside of our dimension, many dimensions outside of our dimension, but you know, we only understand 3. But there's 4 and 5 and 6. There's speculation there's dozens of dimensions. Are we interwoven to some degree because of quantum mechanics? Anything can be everything and everything can be anything. So when we look at these numbers, it don't mean shit to anybody, right? Except I look them up and go, it's important. 81 is the country code for Japan in the international phone network. Shortly after this movie came out, there was a whop-ass earthquake in Japan, wiped out a certain area called Fukushima. The earthquake was magnitude 9, was originally reported as being 8.9. These numbers backwards. There's a 14-hour time difference between the U.S. East Coast, probably where Langley, Virginia, and the control center is, and Japan. So those numbers have an amazing interest. You say, well, it's just all random chance, speculation. Perhaps. But we see, I froze some of the stills in the movie, and this one is from a clock that's on a desk in Nicolas Cage's room, and it's at 11:59. You'll see there's no word under that number at the time. But in the background, there's one book written up called French Relations. Of all the books on the shelf, it's the only one lit up. France was the only country to give diplomatic, or the first to give diplomatic recognition to the Libyan rebels. As the clock changes from 11:59 to 12, of course the 1 and the 2 are put together to make a 3. The date of the infamous tsunami earthquake is 3/11. We have an 11 at the front of the clock here. You say, well, that's just, idle chance, speculation. But as it turns to 12, all of a sudden a word comes up at the bottom that wasn't in the clock when it was 11:59. It tells us flat out, Japan. Because exactly at midnight the HARP machine was turned on, March 9th, UTC. And the 9 is in the code above as well. In this little news clip on Nicolas Cage's TV, sitting in his room, and this is the news comes on. What's that in the background? It's the Gulf of Mexico. And an oil rig on fire. Like, as if that really happened, right? It did. So before the event, the news on his TV is reporting the Gulf disaster. The news reporter says the cooling system has failed. Then in the next little part, you see one of those classic little news flashes or something like that. But it's almost like you have radiating waves from an earthquake across the screen. And then I just picked this picture at random, looking out at the world, changing in catastrophic ways. But knowing is everything. We can see the twilight language for whatever reason, anticipate what's going to come, and get out of the way. So that's the history lesson, and this is the new one. But a lot of it hasn't happened yet. This is what is to be. So we have to just take our best guess. The movie Skyfall, code for a new world order. James Bond's license plate, BMT 216A, got a lot of attention with an extreme close-up in the movie. So a very astute viewer who shared that with a supporter of this show realized this, that there's something there, that this isn't just, idle stuff. It's like a coded warning. You look at the sky, that looks pretty ominous, like they're running the HARP machine, grinding up something. It's another version of the car with the plate. So the most important thing that really gets you going is just like when you found the 666 in the previous set of numbers. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. So they make you work for it a little bit now, instead of just handing it out on a plate with the banana in the cage for the monkey. So they're up to something. We have BMT 216A. This car, the car that's used to fight the enemies of the world, is destroyed in the film. As we listened to Zbigniew Brzezinski, he talked about the United States, the country that's used to destroy the enemies of the whatever, is being destroyed, mostly from within. The person who watched the movie, and he's one up on me because I haven't seen it, he looked at the BM as being a reference to Barack Obama. He was born officially, with his fake documents, on August the 4th, which is the 216th day of the year. He read the T as a transformation of A, America. That's a very astute, right on the ball guy looking and reading the Twilight language. Whether it's correct or not will come with time. I looked at it too, and knowing the cataclysmic events that were foretold, and knowing the Gulf oil disaster, the rupturing of the earth, the nuclear weapon option that they were considering, the Fukushima disaster, we know the Illuminists play rough. So I looked at those things as letters perhaps from states. The letter B meaning break, M and T being Mississippi and Tennessee, A for Alabama, breaking, causing a rift through the middle, as we've posted on a previous blog talking about these prophecies of America splitting in half, prophecies from Edgar Casey, right down the middle, which fits with knowing. So the person who thought this out was worried Obama was chosen to fulfill the task of leading us to Armageddon. I believe that was Romney's task. He didn't get it. Obama's probably going to get sucked into the war after the financial crash as we fight over what's left after the fiat cash system is gone. I also looked at the BMT 216 as scripture. So I picked some out. M, Malachi 2, 16, 1 Thessalonians 2:16, 2 Thessalonians 2:16. You can read that at your leisure. Amos 2:16, Acts 2:16. And I kept on with that one because it seemed to continue the story. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Boy, that gives me a lot to do. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in heavens above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great notable day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So there's always hope. And as I was worried about the center of the United States, another person wrote a very detailed blog about what's under this Louisiana sinkhole. This is nasty. I mean nasty. You look at all these things, billions of barrels of stuff that goes boom in the night. Isobutane, ethane, which is more explosive than the rest by a factor of 3, propane, liquid petroleum gas, that's always been called the poor man's atomic bomb. And this is the Louisiana sinkhole that I've talked about. We have a map that with this blog said it's increased. The stuff spreading out all over the place. And when this puppy goes, you blow up all that stuff. I kid you not. There is a very real possibility, if not probability, you could crack America in half, and these prophecies from Edgar Casey could come true. Never had time to do this in a show, and I'm sorry about that. Let's see if I can go down my list here and just show you the map. I'm sure you've seen it before if you've come to conspiracy-cafe.com, because nobody else is going to really talk about this to a great extent. There we go, the Louisiana sinkhole, the start of something big. This gives you a representation of the split right through the states. And then we have to wonder, is this part of the code that they're talking about? Would this prophecy happen for the end of the Mayan calendar? It's difficult to say. I got my trusty Louisiana State Trooper pin on me, and it doesn't look like they left much of Louisiana left, so I may have the only souvenir of the former state. But we're in a lot of trouble. And we're not going to get much help from our leaders, to say the least. USS Enterprise sailing off to history, heading to the scrap heap. So maybe that's another accomplishment we've had, is being determined alternative media parasites to eat the heart and soul out of the New World Order, is they didn't get to pull off their false flag operation by sinking the USS Enterprise, as was speculated by many sources, in the Middle East in a false flag operation to start a war with Iran and possibly World War III. That's a major accomplishment. And that's why it's so important to change the channel. Let's see, I think I have one little video here that's left to talk about some various prophecies, and this one is scary.
Счастливится некоторым жителям планеты. Астрономы предсказывают взрыв на одной из крупнейших звезд Вселенной, Бетельгейзе, и созвездия Ориона. Светило, находящееся в 640 световых годах от Земли, может взорваться в любой момент. Высока вероятность, что это произойдет уже в этом году. Космическое шоу продлится около 6 недель, то есть нас ждет более 1,5 месяцев белых ночей в определенных участках планеты.
Or anything like that, but it's definitely Russian or Ukrainian or something like that. And you know, you got two suns in the sky, and as we read in scripture there, you know, look up for those signs in the heavens. Now I'd almost think that that would be a news story or something important to talk about on the news. Why is it in only Russian or Ukrainian or whatever she's speaking? They said it happened over Palestine. Perfect place to have a revelation like that. Another small revelation is the Lord of the Rings Mount Doom in New Zealand. Its volcano erupted last week. Not a major super duper eruption, but one of some significance for people that are into signs and warnings from above. Then of course things came out about the moon landing, one of my favorite conspiracies, as we can say the C word here. And sometimes I can't write for a while for various reasons, and then sometimes things just flow into your head and it all makes sense, and you have all the toys you need to complete something, and this is one of those cases. Because virtually everything we have is an illusion created by the master controllers. And if anyone tries to speak the truth or talk the truth, they're punished. So we have a link to the children being taken away from the parents who support the UK Independence Party, the Kazakhstan closing of an entire newspaper for criticizing Tony Blair. Because the world has to exist for these people as a giant fake factory, and most people just accept it with their banana. Ideas are created for our minds, and we blindly accept them as gospel because we trust the source. We haven't found or read Lights, Camera, War to realize it's all fake. So we've outed many aspects of this moonshot. We have Stanley Kubrick's film posted in the video section, and I didn't realize that the link had gone dead. So if you come across something like that, you know, send me a line and I'll look for another one to post. So I did find it because I was going to use it for the link here, realized it's a dead link, and found another copy. and have it up there because this documentary says Kubik faked the moonshot, that he was working for the intelligence agencies. And they killed him for it, as they are wont to do. We discovered and posted on this website, put links back to the website, about these rare rocks that are in Australia, that claims were made these were the rocks brought back from the moon. These are the rarest rocks like on the planet Earth, found in a mine in Australia. And the last version was found and ended up in the newspaper, and for whatever reason God put it under my nose. So that kind of almost proves it. This was in the Daily Mail recently, talking about the set they made to do training for the moon landing. Why is it coming out now? That was in the 60s. Why didn't they tell us about the set when they were making the set? It would only make sense. It's part of the training. No one would be suspicious, but this was almost like kept under the rug, classified. I've never heard about this before. They made these giant copies of the moon and had these simulators to fly around what appeared to be the moon. Or was this part of the set to actually film the landing? You see, how they condition our mind is they do it right from our earliest years. And our parents do it for us, our school teachers, whatever, because we're taught this axiom of fairy tales. Fairy tales go back a long time. Even Heath Ledger was killed in a movie where they did a movie about fairy tales. And he was a major focal point of New World Order plots and conspiracies, if we even have him in shows from years gone by. Scour through that channel and find it, listen to it again. Very interesting stuff. It's even good for me to listen. But what we're taught is, once upon a time, they lived happily ever after. That's programming for your mind, so that every story, every piece of news, every piece of information that goes into your brain has to become in a certain format. It has to start out with once upon a time or something similar to that. They lived happily ever after. So that's why you'll only accept good news and not the truth. That's why you take the lies in the programming. Your brain has been conditioned to accept it in that format and only that format. If someone like me comes up and starts saying that, you know, there's been an error or a big mistake or we're being lied to, that doesn't end with, you don't hear the happy once upon a time and they lived happily ever after. This does not compute. The brain shuts down. You can't accept the information. But just like a computer that has a bad virus, you can fix it. You can turn back the clock on a computer to before the time the virus attacked and restore the computer and use it again. That's a simple technique for getting your baby working again. I've had to do that many, many times doing various public speaking junkets when you're attacked from 6 ways from Sunday. Started to learn to do it in my sleep almost. So you can do that with your brain. You know where the lie came in, go back before that and relearn. So if America turned into a corporation in 1871, and then in the 30s got the second punch, we can go back in time and relearn things and build the Republic of the United States. This is more from the set as they establish this. The detail of these maps are just formidable. As like I say here, I love to find old books, read history, and that's the ultimate time machine, to go back in time and see what happened before. There's nothing new. Everything's the same. In this book that I keep bringing to the studio, I didn't bring it tonight, but I read a page the other day, you know, a page and a quarter. Tells you what went wrong in 1929 and the early 30s. The critique. It's today. It's exactly the same. We've made exactly all the same mistakes. 1 page and a quarter. How many millions and billions of dollars did they spend trying to analyze what's going on? All the mistakes were made. Not a really big book, it's only that big a page. And it tells you all the mistakes they made. Why would you step in a bucket of shit again? Then here we have another picture as well. But people who start to find the truth find out that they've also programmed our brains to have the master reset button so that we don't go off in a new direction and go back to the original programming. They use that C word. You even had to think about that when I named the show. Am I going to say the C word? Because I know that's the master reset button. It's a conspiracy theory. And then right away your brain shuts down and your programming takes into effect, because it doesn't start with once upon a time and end with they lived happily ever after. It puts you into a quantum phase where everything starts to short out. And you have to reprogram your computer, your brain, to fit. So that's why I said we can't fear the C word, the master reset button. We have to embrace it, take it on, and realize that we've been programmed to short out. We can't allow our brains to go into a flux state because we hear that word. So this is where they did this stuff at the Langley Research Center. And knowing full well now that Kubrick filmed this, this is a lot of the background set and material. These people are master criminals. I believe they probably stole the money for the moonshot because they realized nobody could ever go there to find the crime scene. And then when we had advanced with telescopes and possible space travel from China and India to go to the moon in the next couple of few years, they sent missiles there and they blew it up and spread lunar dust all over anything, so no one could ever examine the crime scene or lack of it. They're also filming for Mars at a remote mine, and it's Canada's last asbestos mine, the Jeffrey mine in Quebec. Scientists have been there in a couple of phases to film all the stuff for Mars. So I have to ask, are they really filming Mars there and that we didn't go to Mars and they stole the money again? Wouldn't surprise me. Master criminals know what to do. And this little picture from Doctor Who going to Mars, it can go in your mind. And who exposed this when it happened? Sean Connery, James Bond, 1971, Diamonds Are Forever. Big scene, I remember. I used to go with my buddies all the time to see every James Bond movie when they came out. There he goes. They told us the truth in the movie. He busted through the warehouse doors, and there they are, on a set, filming the moon mission. It was faked. They told us. And what happened to Sean Connery? Well, ultimately, he got the boot for playing James Bond. That's the way the world works. It's an illusion that you accept because you've taken on the programming. And it's hard to come to the point where you can deprogram yourself. But I was trained in that kind of stuff, so that's where you're very fortunate, because there were all kinds of cults and things going around back in my younger days. And in policing, I was trained for cult awareness and deprogramming techniques, and that's what we do to you. Is we show you the illusions, the tricks, what the programming is, give it to you, cards dealt on the table, face up, so that you can deprogram your own mind by realizing that sometimes you look at the sky and when you reach up, you touch the stars. So you have to make a decision. Are the stars painted on the ceiling as an illusion, or do I just go back to the way it was before and pretend with everyone else? That's a quantum leap for you and a lot of other people. But we give you that much information. More information than even a lot of the super elite rich, the super academics could ever figure out, because they're trapped in the illusion. And they love to stay trapped in the illusion because it's rewarding. They get the banana all the time. Money, pension, benefits, power, control, big badges, tasers, guns, bombers, weapons. Helps them maintain a Big Johnson in case they ever end up in a tent with some buxom woman who's sharing emails with these people. But that's an illusion too. Power comes from God, not from these worldly things. That's all will pass. We all leave this existence and go somewhere else. We might as well go standing up, facing it, and understanding it, dealing with it, putting it in its place, and making a real decent kingdom on earth. Kind of like those people who want to make the Republic of the United States. They look like decent people, people you could trust. people you could respect, people who are intelligent, people who wouldn't cheat you out of your last dime, like our politicians. I don't think they'd fly a plane and use force like the government to drop bombs on you. I don't think they'd want to taser someone who wanted to speak his mind or advance the truth. They don't look like those kind of people to me. The ones to be afraid of are the ones at the news desk, the Southern Poverty Law Center, perhaps the FBI agent, because they don't understand that their brains have been programmed with the ultimate virus, and they can't see reality like us, because they've never been deprogrammed or even begin to understand a lot of these concepts. So that's why we write them down, and we're inspired by God to do it. You look at a lot of the things on the quantum universe, or how your mind is programmed from such a very, very early stage, you see the way to get out, to be free, completely and totally, spiritually, mentally, physically. That's good value. You like to support a show like this? We'll take it. We'll run with it, baby. Who knows what we're going to find out tomorrow? Knowing is everything. And at Conspiracy Cafe, here in downtown Toronto, here on the one and only That Channel, with your host, George Freund, and our able assistant, Aaron, doing all the hard work in the background. We can make it happen, baby. You want to donate on PayPal? You want to send something here in the mail? We're open to suggestions. We'd like to take it further, harder, and better, because the big news, Brzezinski is sweating. They can't get their new world order. There's people on the internet upsetting all their master plans. The paradigm has shifted. Now is the time to double our efforts and push them harder and harder and harder until they are in prison. Blair, Bush, Cheney, the whole bloody lot of them. We'll talk about the karma wave next week, Tuesday, when we come back. And we have some bothersome body stories about how many people have died, what they've known, to try to make the world a better place for all of us. So we'll see you next week, Tuesday, hopefully live streaming. Thanks for coming out. Good night.